Good evening, friends. Tonight we'll drift into the stone-lined halls and flickering chambers of a medieval castle. Before we begin, take a moment to settle under your blanket, dim your lights, and let your body sink into comfort. Let your breathing slow, as though you're preparing to curl up by a fire centuries ago. And if this calm journey helps you unwind, feel free to tap like and subscribe, only if it feels right, of course. The question guiding us tonight is simple but enchanting. Why didn't people freeze sleeping in castles, with walls of cold stone, winter winds whistling through gaps, and no central heating? Surely these fortresses were chilly places. Yet, life carried on. People dined, gossiped, laughed, and yes, slept soundly enough to build dynasties. Tonight, I'll walk you through the hidden comforts, the clever tricks, and the sensory worlds of medieval life, all wrapped in a slow, soothing pace to lull your mind into rest. So, close your eyes if you wish, and imagine with me, picture yourself entering a great hall, the beating heart of a medieval castle. The stones underfoot are cool, almost damp, but ahead of you glows an enormous fireplace. The flames dance high, licking at blackened timbers, sending sparks upward like fireflies. You hear the crackle, soft, steady, like a gentle metronome guiding your breath. Even as the draft whispers along the floor, the fire's warmth seeps outward, creating a cocoon of comfort in the central space. This was no ordinary hearth. Some castles in England, around the 13th century, had fireplaces so vast you could walk inside them. Imagine ducking beneath the soot-darkened arch, stacking whole logs the size of tree trunks. The fire wasn't just warmth, it was theatre. Shadows played across banners, flickered over armor, polished on the wall, and made goblets glint like stars. Can you see it? That soft shimmer, that golden halo over tired faces, pulling them closer together. But here's the twist. Castles were built with stone, and stone is stubborn. It drinks in heat, the way dry bread drinks broth, swallowing it before you can claim it. So, while the hall glowed with firelight, step just a little away, and your breath would mist in the air. People learned to live in contrasts, the warmth of fire on one side of the body, the nip of cold on the other. Oddly enough, that rhythm of hot and cool could be soothing, much like slipping a leg out from your blanket when your bed feels too toasty. Now, let's talk about where they slept. Contrary to many images we carry, not everyone had a private chamber tucked away. Servants, guards, and even some lesser nobles often slept right here in the hall, curling up near the fading fire. Straw mattresses were scattered on the floor, like makeshift islands. Over them lay woolen blankets, thick as rugs, woven from sheep that grazed on misty hillsides. If you've ever pressed your cheek into wool, you know the texture. It scratches, yes, but it also holds a deep, earthy warmth, like being hugged by the countryside itself. And sometimes, instead of wool alone, they layered furs. Imagine pulling a fox fur throw over your shoulders, or lining your blanket with rabbit pelts. These weren't just luxuries, they were survival. Winter nights in castles, especially in places like Scotland or northern France, could dip well below freezing. Without such coverings, sleep would have been unthinkable. What about privacy? That was another clever trick. They used bed curtains, heavy cloth panels hung around a frame, enclosing the sleeper. Not only did this block prying eyes, but it trapped body heat, creating a tiny microclimate. Step inside such a curtained bed, and you'd feel the difference instantly, your breath warming the space, your blanket amplifying it. Almost like climbing into a medieval sleeping bag, centuries before the invention of nylon. And here's something delightful: warming pans. Imagine a shallow metal pan, filled with glowing coals, slipped under the bed covers just before you climbed in. The sheets, linen in summer, wool in winter, would soak up the heat. For a few minutes at least, the bed became a toasty nest. It's the closest thing they had to an electric blanket. You can almost hear the hiss of the hot pan sliding across the sheets, and smell the faint tang of metal warmed by fire. I wonder, have you ever slipped into a bed warmed by the sun, or pulled a blanket fresh from the dryer? That sigh you let out, the mix of comfort and gratitude, must have echoed through those stone chambers when a warming pan did its work. Let your mind linger on that image for a moment. A hall glowing with fire, people laughing softly over mugs of spiced ale, servants dragging warming pans from bed to bed, the scent of roasted meat drifting in from the kitchen. The cold was real, yes, but so was the warmth, crafted with fire, furs and community. And as we breathe together now, slow and even, imagine the way sleep must have come easily in that hall. The fire dying to embers, the soft murmur of voices fading, the stone walls standing guard. Now, if you listen closely in that imagined hall, you might hear something else besides the fire. The shuffle of boots against rushes, scattered on the floor, the faint crunch and swish as straw and herbs underfoot release their scents. Castles often laid fresh rushes, or straw across stone floors, sprinkled with lavender, mint, or even sweet woodruff. Why? To mask odors, yes, but also to soften the ground, and add a touch of freshness to the air. Imagine drifting off to sleep with the faint perfume of herbs rising up around you. It's almost like slipping into a field at midsummer, even in the darkest days of December. And while we're on scents, let's not forget food. The Great Hall wasn't only for fireside gatherings, it was for feasting. On cold nights, dinners often ended late, the tables heavy with roasted venison, stewed vegetables, and thick, crusty bread. After the feast, the scraps were cleared, but the scent lingered. Think of falling asleep with the smell of roasted meat still hanging in the air, your belly full, the chatter of the day echoing faintly in your memory. A different kind of lullaby, isn't it? Now, you might wonder, with so many people crowded into one hall, wouldn't it be noisy? Wouldn't sleep be elusive? Surprisingly, shared sleep could actually soothe. The steady hum of breathing, the occasional snore, the rhythm of shifting bodies, it created a background murmur, much like the white noise machines we use today. Even in the 15th century, people found comfort in collective sounds. After all, to hear others sleeping nearby was to feel safe, to know you weren't alone in the night. And then there was clothing. You and I might toss on pajamas, or an oversized shirt, but in the Middle Ages, people often slept in their day linens. Simple long tunics of linen or wool, doubled as nightwear. Some even wore socks or soft boots to bed, wrapping feet in strips of cloth to keep the chill away. Picture yourself cocooned in layers, not glamorous perhaps, but snug. And really, isn't that what matters most? Here's a curiosity. Medieval people believed in the health of sleep as much as we do, though their reasoning could be quirky. Some doctors of the time suggested that sleeping near warmth kept the humors balanced. One manuscript from the 14th century even warned against too much cold air at night, claiming it could weaken the spirit. Whether or not that's true, the idea reminds us of something universal. Everyone, no matter the century, craves the comfort of warmth. Of course, not everyone had the same comforts. Lords and ladies enjoyed chambered rooms, often built high in the castle towers. Their beds were marvels of woodwork, carved with intricate designs, and piled with layers of cloth and fur. Curtains cocooned them, shutting out drafts that slipped through cracks in stone and shutter. Servants, meanwhile, might curl up near the kitchen, taking advantage of the oven's lingering heat. Children often slept together in clusters, sharing blankets, their warmth mingling like little furnaces. Can you see it? A tangle of sleepy faces, hair tousled, breathing in sync. Even dogs were part of the warmth system. Castle dogs, especially hounds, often slept at their owner's feet, or beside them. The phrase "a three-dog night" comes from the idea that the more dogs you had curled around you, the warmer you stayed. Imagine pulling your blanket close and feeling the solid weight of a sleepy dog pressed against your legs, comforting, grounding, and practical. I find myself smiling at the thought. In a way, medieval castles weren't just stone and fire, they were woven tapestries of people, animals, scents, sounds, and warmth layered upon warmth. Each detail was a thread. The rushes beneath your feet, the furs over your body, the quiet laughter of a guard nearby, the dog nestled against you. Together these threads made a night survivable, and sometimes even beautiful. And as the hall grows quiet now, the last goblet drained, the last ember flickering, imagine your own body sinking down into straw, wrapped in wool, the scent of herbs drifting up, cold stone at your back. Yes, but above all, the gentle glow of togetherness keeping you from freezing. As the fire burns lower, Let's follow our imagination to another corner of the hall. There against the wall stands a chest, not just for storage, but also a source of warmth. Many castle dwellers knew that wood held a trace of heat. After sitting near the fire all evening, a clever person might lean their back against such a chest, feeling the slow release of stored warmth. It's the same pleasure you might feel pressing your palm against a sunlit stone wall after a long summer's day. And speaking of cleverness, let me tell you about something delightful: hot stones. Before heading to bed, some families would place stones near the fire, then wrap them in cloth and slip them between the sheets. A medieval version of the hot water bottle, the stone held just enough warmth to take the chill off, a gentle fading comfort that lulled the body into relaxation. Imagine sliding your toes toward one, that sigh of relief spreading through you like ripples in still water. Of course, warmth wasn't only physical, it was social too. The great hall was a gathering space, and laughter has a way of softening the edges of cold. Even after the fire quieted, stories lingered. A minstrel might sing softly, or an elder share tales of distant battles and old loves. Think of the hum of voices, weaving a blanket of sound. Don't you feel safer falling asleep when stories carry you there, like a child tucked in by a bedtime tale? But not every night was filled with stories. Sometimes the castle hall could echo with storms outside, rain drumming on slate roofs, wind moaning through cracks in the walls. On such nights the bed curtains, the furs, the dogs, the hot stones, all became a defense. And strangely, the storm itself became part of the lullaby. I wonder, do you know that feeling? When the outside world is wild, but you are tucked safely inside. That sense of contrast can be deeply soothing, like hearing waves crash while you drift on a calm boat. Let's pause with another detail that always makes me smile. Medieval beds, especially for nobles, could be surprisingly high off the ground, not just for grandeur, but for warmth. Rising away from the cold, drafty floors made a difference. Some beds were so tall that stools were needed to climb into them. Picture yourself lifting a heavy fur blanket, stepping up onto a carved stool, and climbing into a nest of pillows. The kind of action that turns going to bed into a little ceremony of comfort. And pillows, yes, they had them, though not always fluffy. Some were stuffed with feathers, others with straw or even herbs. Imagine resting your head on a pillow filled with dried lavender or hops, the scent rising with every shift. A medieval way of making dreams a little sweeter. Now we can't leave the hall without mentioning the glow of candles. Beeswax candles for the wealthy, tallow candles for the rest. Their flames flickered gold and orange, casting gentle halos. Falling asleep by candlelight carried its risks, of course, but also its charms. That soft light dimming as the wick sputtered. It's like watching twilight itself curl into night. Even now, many of us light candles to find peace. Some habits are eternal. And then as the night deepened, guards would continue their watch, boots echoing faintly through the corridors. Their presence was both practical and comforting. Somewhere in the shadows, someone stayed awake to keep danger at bay. Perhaps you felt it, that sense that you can truly relax because someone else is holding the night for you. In a castle, that was no small reassurance. So in this imagined great hall, the fire fades, the stories soften, the candles gutter low, and the world narrows to warmth against cold. Straw under you, furs over you, perhaps a dog at your feet, and your head sinking into a herb-stuffed pillow. The stone walls do not vanish, but their chill no longer matters. The night is yours, and the cold is conquered, not by single warmth, but by layers of it: fire, fabric, scent, sound, and shared presence. Let me take you now to the kitchens. Yes, even kitchens played a role in warmth. Picture a cavernous room, walls blackened with centuries of smoke, great ovens still radiating long after the day's baking was done. At night some servants curled up close to those ovens, the bricks releasing their stored heat. Can't you almost feel it? That gentle exhale of warmth, steady and reliable, like the slow breathing of a giant asleep. The kitchens also meant food, and food itself was warmth. Stews thick with barley and root vegetables were staples in the cold months. When you've eaten a steaming bowl, heat doesn't just fill your belly, it radiates outward, loosening your shoulders, softening your edges. For castle folk, A late-night cup of spiced wine or hot ale could turn a shivering night into one of drowsy comfort. Think of it as their version of a midnight cocoa, the medieval warm hug in a mug. And here's a curiosity you might not expect. Walls themselves could help. While stone absorbed cold, tapestries and wall hangings softened it. Vast woven seams, hunts, battles, saints, covered the chill surfaces, acting as insulation. They dulled the echo of the room too, making sound more intimate. Imagine lying in bed with torchlight, flickering over a tapestry of green forests or noble knights. The image became a companion in the night, a silent story keeping you company. Of course, warmth could be psychological as much as physical. Faith, for instance, wrapped people in a different kind of comfort. In some castles, chapels glowed with candlelight through the night. Quiet prayers drifted upward, steady as the smoke from incense. For the faithful, this meant reassurance. If the soul was guarded, surely the body could rest as well. Think of how we sometimes fall asleep repeating a calming thought, a mantra, or even counting sheep. In those echoing halls, prayer was often the sheep counting of choice. And then there was company. Nobles might share their chambers with attendants. Children slept in groups. Soldiers bunked together. Solitude was rare. For us today, sleeping with others in the room might feel unsettling, but back then it was expected, and often welcome. Imagine the shared warmth of breath in the air, the rustle of bodies rearranging themselves under blankets, the comfort of knowing someone else stirred. If you woke in the dark, safety is not only about walls and guards, it is about presence. Now, a little humor, because I promised some. Imagine a medieval sleeper rolling over, bumping into the hound, startling awake, and muttering something half asleep like, "Saints preserve us, that's my foot." Such small relatable moments must have happened. Sleep, after all, has always been messy, full of snores and tumbles, just as it is today, and perhaps that very ordinariness was its charm. Let's not forget winters were harshest in certain places. Records tell us that in the winter of 1315, famine struck much of Europe, and people huddled together in desperation. Yet even then, they adapted. They made do with straw, furs, warmth from animals, and the fire's glow. The human body, after all, is a stubborn survivor. And perhaps that's why the memory of these castles lingers, not as tombs of cold stone, but as living homes where resilience glowed against frost. So picture it now, the kitchen embers fading, tapestries holding in a whisper of heat, prayers lingering in the chapel air, dogs shifting at their master's feet. The night draws close, but within the castle walls, layers of warmth hold steady, a balance, a quiet triumph. As dawn approaches in our imagined castle, let's linger on those final moments of sleep, when warmth clings to you most tenderly. The fire in the hall has burned almost to ash, just a faint orange glow pulsing like the heartbeat of the night. Around it, bodies are curled under blankets, breaths rising in little clouds that fade into the air. The dogs stretch and sigh, their paws twitching with dreams of the hunt. For a moment, the whole room feels suspended, caught between darkness and day, cold stone and warm bodies, silence and the whisper of life. When the first sliver of sunlight slides through an arrow-slit window, it doesn't flood the hall, it creeps in shyly, catching dust motes, touching the edge of a fur blanket, glinting on a brass candlestick. The sleepers stir, some groan, pulling covers tighter, reluctant to trade warmth for duty. Others rise quickly, already shrugging on cloaks, boots clattering against stone. And isn't that the same today? The battle between blanket and alarm clock is centuries old. Before they leave, they shake out their bedding, straw rustling, wool thudding against wooden benches. They fold furs carefully, roll up mattresses, and tidy away the fragments of last night's warmth. Soon the hall will become lively again, filled with clatter and chatter, but for those quiet moments, it is still intimate, still wrapped in the echoes of sleep. What strikes me most about this rhythm is how ordinary it all was for them. Castles in our minds can seem like icy monuments, all cold towers and echoing chambers, yet within those walls were people, not so different from us, seeking warmth, laughter, food and the comfort of company. Their solutions, fires, furs, dogs, hot stones, shared sleep were simple, yet ingenious. And the truth is, they didn't simply survive in castles, they made them homes. Let's take one more small curiosity with us.
The idea of dreams. Medieval thinkers believed dreams were shaped by what you ate and where you slept. A heavy meal of cheese or beans, they said, might lead to restless visions. Sleeping too close to a fire could stir fiery dreams. Imagine lying beneath a fur blanket, hearing the last crackle of embers, and drifting into a dream shaped by warmth itself. A dream of summer meadows, or glowing sunsets, carried on the same heat that lulled your body. And so the question, why didn't people freeze in castles? The answer is layered. Like their bedding, they had fires to chase the shadows, furs to trap the warmth, curtains to hold it close, animals and people to share it, and clever little tricks, hot stones, warming pans, even prayers, that made the difference between shivering and slumber. They faced cold, yes, but never alone. Warmth was always within reach, in one form or another. As we close this first chapter, let your imagination hold on to that hall. See the fading fire, the resting hounds, the tapestries rippling slightly in a hidden draught. Feel yourself there, tucked in, wrapped in wool, safe beneath the watchful stone walls. And as you let go of the scene, let your breath grow even slower, as if you too are sinking into the last precious moments of sleep before dawn. And now softly, we'll leave the hall behind, for the castle has many more secrets to share. From chambers to kitchens, from towers to tapestries, there are countless ways people turned cold stone into warm havens. And in our next chapter, we'll wander further, to discover another layer of medieval comfort, as the story continues.
Good evening again, or perhaps I should say, good night still, for in our story the sun has not yet risen fully. Let us step away from the communal warmth of the great hall and move upward into a quieter, more private place of rest. This space was called the Solar, a chamber set aside for the lord and lady of the castle, perched high in the keep, or along a sunlit side of the building. Now imagine yourself climbing the worn stone staircase that curves upward in a spiral. Your hand brushes against the cold wall, fingertips grazing stone shaped by centuries of use. Each step creaks faintly underfoot, though not of wood, but of age-old wear. The stairwell is narrow, forcing you to move in single file, as though the very architecture insists on slowing your pace. Doesn't that feel appropriate for a sleep story? Step by step, breath by breath, we rise into stillness. At the top, a heavy oak door creaks open. Inside, you find the Solar bathed in dim light, the air carrying the faint aroma of beeswax candles and the subtle sweetness of dried herbs stored in little cloth bags. Compared to the echoing hall below, the room feels intimate, quieter, as though wrapped in a hushed embrace. You can hear the muffled world beyond, perhaps the distant caw of a crow outside the window slit, or the soft gust of wind rattling shutters. But here, it is warm, and that warmth is crafted carefully. Unlike the vast halls, the Solar was small enough to hold heat. A fireplace, though modest, burns steadily along one wall. The fire doesn't roar, it murmurs. The flames crackle softly, steady and unhurried, as though in no rush to consume the logs. Every flicker casts amber light on the tapestries hanging nearby. These woven cloths aren't just decoration. They insulate the room, softening drafts, adding layers of comfort. Now let's picture the bed. Not a simple pile of straw, but a carved wooden frame, lifted high above the floor. A feather mattress lies across it, stuffed tightly so that it puffs under the weight of blankets. Layers upon layers, linen sheets, wool coverings, and finally thick fur throws, perhaps bear or fox, depending on the lord's wealth and taste. Pull them back and climb in, and you'd sink as though the bed itself wanted to swallow you into safety. But here comes a charming detail. The curtains. Heavy fabric hangs around the bed, enclosing it fully when drawn. Slip inside, and you step into a cocoon. Your own breath warms the space, the heat of your body trapped, turning the small interior into something surprisingly cozy. It's the medieval version of a tent within a room. Picture yourself now, drawing those curtains shut, listening to the muffled fire outside, and letting the cocoon hold you. Clothing plays a part here too. In the solar, one might shed a layer or two, perhaps slipping into a long linen shift or nightgown. Still, socks or soft slippers often stayed on. Stone floors remained cold. After all, on especially bitter nights, even nobles might wear caps to bed, the fabric keeping warmth from escaping through the head. Imagine adjusting your blanket, tucking it around your chin, and feeling that little cap holding in your heat, like a seal against the winter air. And though the solar was more private, it wasn't lonely. Children, attendants, or sometimes favored guests might sleep nearby. A little chamber adjoining the main room might host a cradle or pallet. Soft lullabies may have drifted in the dark, simple repetitive melodies sung by tired mothers or nursemaids. Can you hear it? A tune humming just at the edge of consciousness, blending with the fire's crackle, wrapping the night in tenderness. Let me settle you a little deeper into that cocooned bed, where the curtains drift just slightly with each breath you take. Outside them, the room keeps its own quiet tempo. The embers' soft click, the faint flutter of a tapestry when a sneaky draught dares to enter, the mellow sigh of the log as it gives up another little pocket of heat. It's a pocket-sized weather system. Inside the curtains, warm and human. Outside, cool and polite, like winter waiting in the hall with its hat in hand. On a low stool near the hearth sits a small brazier with nothing more than a handful of glowing charcoal. It's not roaring, just glowing the way a fire glows when it knows its job is to accompany, not command. Before climbing into bed, someone passed a pan of those same coals beneath the sheets. You can almost feel the lingering warmth in the linen, a traveling sunset that moved down the mattress and left behind a whisper of heat. Such little rituals defined the night. A warming pan here, a bed cap there, a careful banked fire. Together they turned a stony chamber into a snug little planet. The scents layer softly, too, beeswax from the candles, faint animal musk from the furs, thyme and lavender tucked in sachets along the window. Not to be fancy, though it is a bit fancy, but because herbs were friendly, practical companions, they kept pests at bay, and lent the air a gentleness that made the body say, yes, I could stay here a while, maybe all night, maybe longer. Isn't it funny how scent does that? One breath, and suddenly the shoulders drop, the brow smooths, and your whole being decides to exhale. There's a small writing desk against the wall, its surface smooth where a sleeve has polished it 100 times. A wax tablet lies ready for notes, lists, a quick prayer, a line of a song. Sometimes before sleeping, the lady of the house might scratch down a reminder in the dim light, which cloth to mend, what spice to ask the steward to fetch, a word she wants to remember. That small act, closing a loop before bed, has a familiar comfort. You've done it too, haven't you? The tiny to-do that makes a pillow feel more welcoming. Listen closely, and you'll notice the room's soundtrack has layers. Beneath the fire is the shy tap of a shutter hook, and beneath that, the slow beat of your own breathing. Somewhere farther off, a watchman calls the hour, his voice drowsy with routine. All's well. It's not poetry, but it is peace, and peace is the rarest luxury of all. Here's a gentle historical note to anchor us by the 1200s and 1300s. Many noble residences in England and France favoured the solar specifically to catch daylight and keep warmth, hence the name. The bigger, showier rooms did their work by day. The solar gathered the sun by afternoon and held the day's heat a little longer into evening. Practical, yes, but also quietly romantic, like choosing the chair where evening light always seems kind to the pages of your book. Beds too grew more artful over these centuries, feather mattresses, if you were lucky, wool-stuffed if you weren't, and sometimes a straw tick beneath it all. Think of it as a medieval parfait, layers stacked to balance comfort and insulation. Top it with a fur throw, and you have the era's closest cousin to a heated blanket. A hot pocket of the human sort, less snack, more snug, and if a crumb of humor helps you drift, Yes, this is the original limited edition seasonal flavor of cozy. A tray sits within reach, with the night's small kindnesses, a lidded cup with warm ale spiced with a clove or two, a heel of bread, maybe a fig, or a morsel of quince paste. Sweet and simple, enough to quiet a rumbling stomach, so dreams can do their work. For the record, a 14th century physician might warn gently that too much cheese before bed invites busy visions. We've all met that cheese. Little rituals like this become lullabies. The hands can sing. If you peek past the curtains, you'll catch a hint of starlight at the window. Just a sliver, silver and patient. The tapestry by the chimney, a hunt scene frozen mid-stride, moves almost imperceptibly when the draft changes. It's funny how pictures keep us company at night. Not just noise-proofing and insulation, but gentle companionship for the eyes. A promise that stories will be waiting when you wake. And now I wonder, what will tomorrow's morning look like here? A fire coaxed back to life with a breath and a coal. Footsteps soft on cold floorboards, followed by a quick hop back under covers. Everyone's favorite dance. Somewhere a pot will hum to itself as water warms. But that is tomorrow's business. Tonight belongs to this nest. Curtains drawn, cap snug, sheets remembering the warming pan's soft sunset. Let yourself sink another small inch into the mattress. Feel how the air within the curtains is a fraction warmer than the air beyond. Let that tiny difference convince your body that it has chosen well. And as your breath lengthens, consider this warmth here isn't a single blaze, but a braided cord. Fabric and fire, daylight remembered by stone, food and faith, routine and tenderness. A cord strong enough to hold you, and a household, through the longest night. Let me draw your attention now to the sounds of the night, for the solar was never entirely silent. The wind had a way of finding the tiniest cracks, slipping past shutters, and whistling through them like a flute. Sometimes it moaned, sometimes it chirped a little, high and playful. The stone walls amplified it, so what began as a whisper outside became an echoing presence inside. But behind the thick bed curtains, those sounds softened. The wind became less a threat, and more a lullaby, an old tune nature repeated without tiring. Then came the creak of wood, furniture settling, beams adjusting, the castle sighing as it cooled. You might imagine the keep as stiff and eternal, but it was alive in its own slow rhythm. The bed frame groaned like a tired uncle shifting his weight, the shutters tapped like fingertips on a desk. And if you've ever fallen asleep in a house that seems to breathe, you'll know the feeling. It is strangely reassuring, isn't it? The sense that the place around you shares the same cycle of rest. In some solas, the floor was covered with rugs brought from far-off lands, woven patterns of reds and blues, their fibers thicker than the rushes laid down in the hall below. These rugs didn't just insulate. They whispered of trade routes, of merchants crossing seas, of distant cultures. Imagine toes brushing across them before slipping into bed, the softness surprising after a day on stone. A medieval treat for the senses. And then there's the light. We spoke of candles, but let's linger here. In noble solas, beeswax candles were common, their honeyed scent warm and subtle. Picture one burning low, its wax curling like the petals of a flower folding inward. The light is steady, calmer than tallow's sputter, painting the room in golden strokes. It catches the curve of a carved bedpost, glows against the fur throw, softens the wrinkles in a linen sheet. Even as the wick shortens, the glow feels generous, like a companion unwilling to leave you in darkness too quickly. Now, imagine drifting to sleep in this cocoon, while the world outside remains raw. Snowflakes might be falling, landing against shutters with faint ticks, piling high on parapets. The courtyard below may be dusted white, torches sputtering as guards trudge past, their breath clouds rising into the air. And here you are, inside, wrapped in wool, the fur collar brushing your cheek, the warming pan's kiss still lingering in the linen. The contrast is delicious, isn't it? The more fierce the cold outside, the sweeter the warmth within. Here's a little human detail that always amuses me. Medieval sleepers often went to bed much earlier than we do. Without electric light, the rhythm of life bowed to the sun. People retired soon after nightfall, then often woke again around midnight for a brief second waking. During this interlude, some prayed, some talked quietly, some even enjoyed a snack before drifting back to sleep. Can you picture it? The noble couple whispering softly in their cocoon, a servant bringing a mug of warm ale,
The fire coaxed a little higher, and then once more, the slow slide into slumber. It's a rhythm that makes sense. 2 shorter rests instead of 1 long stretch. And maybe you felt something like it, waking in the night and finding the world hushed, as though sleep has chapters of its own. Clothing, food, sounds, scents, rituals, they all braided together here in the solar. Together they told the body, you are safe, you are warm, you can let go. And so sleep came not as a struggle, but as an invitation. As you picture yourself now, beneath those curtains, think of the solar not as a relic of history, but as a reminder. Warmth isn't only about heat, it's about layers, presence and rhythm, and tonight in this story, you are part of that rhythm, slipping easily into its quiet flow. Let's lean for a moment into the textures of the solar, because the feel of things mattered so much in a cold stone chamber. Picture running your hand across the linen sheets, cool at first, crisp but softening as your body warms them. Linen has that gift, smooth and breathable, strong yet forgiving. Beneath it, the wool blanket waits, heavy and scratchy but loyal, the kind of texture that announces itself against the skin. Some people today might grumble at the coarseness, but back then it was the fabric of reassurance, proof that sheep on the hillside were still keeping watch, even while you slept. And then the fur, thick pelts of fox, wolf or even bear, stitched together in generous swathes. They weren't just covers, they were shields against the season. Draw one over you, and you'd feel as if you'd slipped into the body of winter itself, only to find it warm instead of cold. The fur brushed your chin, smelled faintly of earth and smoke, and transformed the bed into something alive, something protective. Can you feel that weight? The comforting press that says, you're not going anywhere, not until morning comes. The curtains deserve another thought too. When they were drawn, they muffled not only sound but scent and light. They turned the bed into its own little chamber, private and hushed. Imagine lying there, the glow of the fire reduced to a faint blush against fabric, the draught turned into the gentlest whisper. It is easy to see how people spoke of the bed as a sanctuary, not just a place to lie down. Now look toward the hearth again. The fire burns lower, but near it stands a stool where stockings have been draped to dry. Damp from the day's snow or mud, they lean toward the embers, their wool curling slightly as the heat coaxes out moisture. Tomorrow those stockings will be pulled on warm, a tiny victory against the cold. Don't you love those little victories, like slipping on clothes still warm from the sun, or drinking tea that hasn't yet cooled? They remind us that comfort is sometimes found in the smallest moments, and in the quiet of the solar, those small comforts stacked up, the warmth of a fire, the smell of beeswax, the feel of linen, the sight of a tapestry, the taste of spiced ale, all of them joining forces to tell the body, you may rest now. Sleep is not a battle here, there's also the company of memory. In many noble homes, the solar displayed small objects, jewelry boxes, carved figurines, a polished mirror of bronze or silver. Imagine catching sight of such a mirror by firelight. It doesn't show a crisp image, just a softened glow, a dreamlike version of yourself. In such reflections, night seems kinder. And perhaps that was the point, to remind you that even in a cold, drafty castle, warmth was not only in fur and fire, but in beauty and familiarity. And just when sleep seemed certain, the world outside would sometimes remind you of its presence, an owl hooting in the dark, wings slicing through the night air, or the clatter of hooves on stone, as a messenger arrived late, breaking the rhythm of slumber. But inside the curtains, you'd feel the difference. The outside was duty and noise, inside was a private world of breath and warmth. The contrast made the sanctuary sweeter. So here in the solar, warmth was a tapestry of senses, fabric against skin, light against shadow, scent against stale air, all woven together, all working quietly. And when you closed your eyes, those layers stayed with you, carrying you gently into dreams. As the night deepens in our imagined solar, let us return once more to the simple rhythm of breath and fire. The embers glow like patient stars, their light pulsing faintly across the room. The air is cooler now, but the bed curtains hold their little pocket of warmth steady. Within them you're safe, like a seed tucked in the earth, waiting for spring. The household has grown quiet. Even the guards outside have stopped calling the hour, their voices lost in drowsiness. The silence is not empty. It hums with the presence of stone, of wood, of lives layered into the walls. If you listen closely, you might hear only the rustle of fabric as someone shifts under covers, or the gentle creak of timbers overhead. It is the sound of a castle resting, and in that stillness, sleep settles more deeply. The fur grows heavier across your body, the linen warmer against your skin. Each sense finds its rest. The eyes soften, watching only the faintest play of light. The ears settle into the hush. The nose breathes in beeswax, herbs and smoke, all blended into one familiar perfume. Even the skin quiets, soothed by texture and heat. It's as though the whole body sighs at once, grateful for layers that stand guard against winter's bite. A final thought to carry with you: warmth in the solar wasn't about abundance, but balance. Too much fire could choke the air, too little left you shivering. The art was in finding just enough coals banked to last, furs layered not for show, but for survival. Curtains drawn, but not stifling. That balance, humble and quiet, made the difference between enduring and sleeping soundly. And maybe it teaches us something still, that true comfort is often found in just enough. I wonder, as you imagine yourself nestled in that bed, have you ever felt the same contrast? The way cold makes warmth more vivid, the way silence makes every small sound precious. The medieval sleeper knew these contrasts every night, and so when they closed their eyes, dreams came not from comfort alone, but from the harmony of opposites: cold and warm, silence and murmur, stone and fabric, fire and shadow, all woven together into rest. And so, as the last ember sighs into ash, and the night tips toward dawn, you remain wrapped in that cocoon. The castle will stir soon, maids carrying buckets of water, stewards calling out lists of duties, children waking with giggles, but not yet. For now you rest, wrapped in fur and faith, in fabric and flame, drifting easily into dreams. So let us close the curtains of the solar, one last time, and leave this chamber to its sleepers. Take with you the image, a high bed carved with care, sheets still remembering the warmth of coals, tapestries holding back the draught, the fire's glow softening to embers, and within it all, the quiet heartbeat of a household at peace. And as we step softly out, down the narrow stairs, let your breath remain slow, and your body remain heavy, as though you too carry the warmth of that room inside you. For our journey is not over. Other corners of the castle wait, with their own secrets, their own layers of warmth. In our next chapter, we will wander toward those spaces, discovering yet another way people kept the cold at bay.
Now that we've left the hush of the solar, let's follow the scent of smoke and spice drifting through the stone corridors. Down we go, spiraling steps that echo with each footfall, until we reach the belly of the castle, the kitchens. By day they are clattering, bustling places, knives on chopping blocks, pots hissing over flames, voices shouting orders and laughter all at once. But at night, after the last feast is cleared, they transform into something quieter, almost sacred in their stillness. Step into that cavernous space now. The ceilings are high, blackened with centuries of soot. Wooden tables stretch across the room, their surfaces scored with knife marks, polished in places where elbows leaned. Great cauldrons hang over the hearth, some still faintly steaming, carrying the ghost of a stew made hours before. And in the air lingers the fragrance of roasted meat, baked bread, herbs crushed under mortar and pestle. It is the perfume of a kitchen that has fed dozens, perhaps hundreds, and now finally rests. But not all heat disappears with the cooks. The great ovens still glow softly, their stones radiating a slow, steady warmth into the room. Servants and kitchen hands, weary from the day, often found themselves curling near these ovens when the night grew cold. Can you picture it? A body leaning against the stone, cheeks pink from lingering heat, the air around them humming like a low lullaby. The ovens were not just for bread, they were beds in disguise, guardians of warmth long after flames were doused. Sometimes clever hands took advantage of this heat for food too. Dough left near the cooling oven would rise overnight, ready for baking come morning. Milk might be kept just close enough to stay from freezing. Even sleep and sustenance wove together here. Warmth that preserved food also preserved comfort. Isn't that a beautiful thought? But in the simplest of ways, heat carried on, serving body and spirit alike. Now imagine lying down on a pile of straw in the corner, close enough to feel the oven's gentle exhale, far enough to avoid the smoke. A rough wool blanket pulled over you, the earthy scent of hay mixing with the kitchen's perfume. It's not the grandeur of a solar, no carved bed or feather mattress, but it has its own charm, the kind of sleep that comes after hard work, when every muscle is heavy and warmth feels like a well-earned gift. And here's where a bit of humor sneaks in. Picture a kitchen hound, loyal but opportunistic, sneaking closer to your straw pallet, curling beside you not out of loyalty, but for warmth. Soon a goose destined for tomorrow's pot might flap its wings from a basket, adding its noises to the night. Sleep in the kitchens was never silent, but it was alive, filled with the rustles and sighs of a space that never entirely rested. History tells us that in many castles of the 14th and 15th centuries, servants often preferred these kitchens or pantries for sleeping because of their warmth. Records even describe scoldings for maids caught dozing too close to the oven, their duties left undone. Yet the practice endured. Warmth always wins. And so while nobles cocooned themselves in feather beds, many found their comfort in the kitchen's glow. So tonight, let's rest here for a while, curled near the great oven, listening to the drip of cooling fat in the hearth, the rustle of straw, the steady sigh of stone releasing its stored heat. The kitchen, though humble, was one of the castle's true bedrooms. If you linger in this kitchen a little longer, your eyes adjust to the half-light. Shadows of hanging utensils sway slightly in the draught. Iron ladles, long-handled forks, copper pots that still carry the gleam of use. They hang like a choir of silent bells, waiting for morning's clamor. A single tallow candle gutters on a side table, its flame dancing low, making the shadows shift like drowsy dancers. There is something soothing about this half-life of the kitchen, half asleep, half awake, still carrying the day's warmth like a blanket draped across stone. Near the hearth stands a spit, blackened by years of turning. Sometimes even after the fire dies, it holds warmth enough to radiate comfort if you curl beside it. Servants knew every corner that kept the night kinder. One leaned against a flour sack for softness, another nestled into the crook between oven and wall. These weren't elegant choices, but they were clever, practical ones born of long winters and limited options. And in truth, warmth didn't always mean silence here. A mouse might scurry across the rushes, seeking crumbs left from supper. The kitchen cat, never far, would stir from its slumber, stretch and stalk quietly after the intruder. Imagine hearing that soft padded step, the faint squeak, and then nothing more. A moment of drama tucked into the lullaby of the night. But soon all is still again, the oven sighs, the straw rustles, and quiet returns. Sometimes, though, the quiet was broken by laughter, for it wasn't uncommon that several servants bedded down together in these spaces. Tired though they were, they might whisper jokes, swap stories, or even tease one another before drifting into sleep. Their giggles softened the hard edges of the stone walls, making the kitchen feel less like a workplace and more like a den of camaraderie. And really, isn't that what warmth is too? Not only heat for the body, but joy for the spirit. Now let's not forget the scents. Kitchens were filled with them, even at night. The smoky tang of firewood clung to everything. The rich perfume of herbs, rosemary, sage, thyme, rose from bundles hung to dry near the ceiling beams. A faint sweetness lingered from honey cakes baked earlier in the day. And somewhere sharp vinegar bit the air, where pickles were stored. Can you smell it all, blending together into a fragrance unlike anywhere else in the castle? It was the scent of survival, of food prepared, stored, preserved against hunger. And when you slept among it, it was reassurance itself. The ovens, still radiating, became more than warmth. They became storytellers. Each brick held the memory of what it had baked. a loaf that rose tall and golden, a pie that bubbled until its crust split, a joint of venison roasted until tender. To sleep near those ovens was to rest in the company of countless meals, countless nights of nourishment, a kind of comfort that fed not only the belly, but the heart. And if you woke in the middle of the night, you might find yourself nibbling. A crust left on the table, a piece of cheese tucked into cloth, a dried fig from the pantry. Midnight snacks are not inventions of the modern age. The difference was, your snack carried the tang of smoke and salt, a food meant to last through long winters. Imagine chewing a crusty bit of bread in the flicker of a dying fire, the taste both humble and grounding. So yes, the kitchens were noisy, messy, scented, and sometimes full of animals, but they were also warm, alive, and endlessly comforting. To sleep here was to know you were close to the source of life itself, the food that sustained the household, and the fires that sustained the soul. As you imagine yourself lying there on the straw, close to the oven's slow breath, notice how the kitchen itself almost seems to breathe with you. The rafters creak as they cool, like old bones settling. The last kettle releases a quiet sigh of steam, barely audible, like the final note of a lullaby. The air feels dense with memory, of the day's chopping, roasting, stirring, and yet now, it is gentle, patient as though waiting for dawn. Along the far wall, shelves are stacked with jars and crocks, salted meat, dried beans, pickled vegetables, all carefully stored to carry the castle through lean months. The sight of them, even in the shadows, is reassuring. In a world where harvests could fail and winters could be cruel, these shelves were insurance. To sleep within reach of them was to know security. You were surrounded not only by warmth, but by abundance, even if the abundance was simple: beans, peas, onions, salted pork. Imagine drifting off with that knowledge, like falling asleep beside a pantry stocked with promises. And then, of course, there were the sounds of the courtyard beyond. Through a small shuttered window you might hear a horse stamp a hoof, or the jingle of tack as a groom moved through the stables. Dogs bark once, then settle again. The castle never truly slept. It murmured instead, each part humming its own tune. But from your warm corner by the oven, these sounds were distant, softened, like waves crashing far away. They reminded you that life continued beyond, but did not disturb the peace within. Here is a curious thought. In some castles, the kitchens were so vast that fires burned in multiple hearths. One for roasting meats, another for boiling cauldrons, another still for baking bread. At night, these hearths, banked and quiet, glowed like constellations across the room. Can you see them? Pockets of red-orange warmth, scattered through the darkness, like stars fallen to earth. To lie among them was to sleep under a different sky, stone above instead of heavens, but stars just the same, and sometimes the food itself joined the dreams. Historical accounts mention that rich or spiced meals could influence visions. A heavy stew might bring on vivid images, too much wine might tangle the night with restless tossing. In the kitchens, with all their scents, you might imagine dreams flavored by rosemary or cinnamon, honey or vinegar. Dreams that smelled like feasts, carried on into the night. Haven't you ever dreamed of food after falling asleep hungry or satisfied? The body carries these things with it, tucking them gently into the fabric of the mind. Now picture a servant child, curled in a corner, clutching a rough doll stuffed with straw. The fire paints their cheeks rosy, their blanket patched but warm. Beside them, the kitchen dog snores softly, paws twitching. Across the room, a scullion leans against a sack of flour, his head lolling, his dreams no doubt filled with the very bread he needs each day. Together they form a little constellation of sleepers, each one tied to the warmth of the ovens. It's humble, yes, but there's something beautiful in its honesty, and as the night grows quieter, the ovens release less heat, but not none. Like tired friends, they keep giving, even as they fade. The room cools, but by then bodies have adjusted, blankets pulled closer, sleep already heavy. The balance of warmth and coolness is found again, as it always is. So you rest in the kitchens, surrounded by food, by fire, by life itself, and the night stretches on, steady and generous, waiting to carry you deeper into dreams. Look closer now at the hearth itself.
Even as the flames are gone, the ashes still glow, and there is a ritual in tending them. Before sleep, someone always banks the fire, pulling the embers together, covering them gently with ash, to make them last until morning. It's a small act, but it means the household won't wake to a dead hearth. Instead, the first to rise will only need to stir the embers, add wood, and coax the fire back to life. Imagine watching those last glowing coals tucked in like children, carefully hidden beneath a blanket of ash. Isn't it oddly comforting? Fire put to bed, just as people are. And warmth could be found not only in ovens but in the stones themselves. After hours of absorbing heat, the thick walls of the kitchen radiated it back in whispers. Sit against them, and you'd feel it, a slow, steady warmth creeping through your spine. It's not a rush like sitting before a blaze, but a quiet persistence, the way sun-warmed earth still holds heat, long after sunset. In this, the castle itself became a silent participant in keeping its people alive. Now let us wander through the pantry adjoining the kitchen. The cool air carries the scent of dried fish, sharp and salty, alongside the earthy musk of onions and garlic hanging in braids. Barrels line the floor. Ale, cider, salted herring, dried apples. Some barrels are cool to the touch, others faintly warm from fermentation. Even here, warmth and cold live side by side, a balance that keeps the food steady through the season. Imagine slipping into this pantry at night, lantern in hand, shadows dancing across the curved lids of barrels. It's not a bedroom, yet its abundance is a lullaby, all the same. And here's a small, human detail. Sometimes servants snuck a taste before bed. A corner of cheese, a sip of ale, a bit of dried fruit. Not to steal greedily, but to comfort themselves, to fall asleep with something sweet on the tongue. You can almost taste it, a fig, chewy and honeyed, or a sip of ale that warms the chest. Think of how we too, like a little bedtime snack, though ours might be milk and cookies instead. The instinct is timeless. Feed the body gently, and the mind will soften into rest. Back in the kitchen proper, listen to the sounds again. The faint drip of water from a ladle not quite emptied, the creak of wood in the rafters. Somewhere, a pigeon calls softly in the roof beams, the dog shifts and sighs. Every sound is small, yet together they form a steady rhythm, like a cradle rocking, and within that rhythm, sleep deepens. History tells us that in some large castles, the kitchen was one of the warmest places through winter, not only for servants, but for cats, dogs, even the occasional falcon resting in its perch near the warmth. Imagine the mingling, human, animal, tools, food, all sharing one chamber. A strange household perhaps, but united by fire. And so the kitchen, though meant for labor, transformed at night into a sanctuary. Not elegant, not luxurious, but real, tangible, honest. Warmth was not just comfort here, it was survival, and survival had its own beauty. So as you lie once more on the straw pallet, the oven's warmth fading but steady, think of all the generations who did the same, and let the thought soothe you. The kitchen kept them alive, and tonight in our imagination, it keeps you as well. As the night deepens and the ovens lose their glow, the kitchen settles into true stillness. The shadows stretch long, the candle finally gutters out, and all that remains is the faint perfume of smoke woven into the air. Yet even in the near dark, the space feels alive, as though the very walls are keeping watch. To sleep here is not to be alone, it is to share company with stone and wood, with food and fire, with the countless lives who passed through before. The straw beneath you is rough, but it molds to your body, pressing into every curve until it feels almost like a nest. Your blanket is thin, but the oven nearby radiates its final whispers of heat. Across the room, the dog has curled tighter, nose tucked beneath its tail, dreaming of scraps it might find tomorrow. The cat, triumphant after its nightly hunt, licks its paws lazily before tucking itself into a ball. Even the animals know this kitchen is the warmest place to be, and in this warmth, your mind drifts toward memories of the day. You recall the feasts prepared here, the laughter in the hall above, as guests tore into roasted meat, the steam rising from pies, the sweet aroma of honey cakes that lingered even after plates were cleared. The kitchen carries these echoes like lullabies, and as you breathe them in, you feel as though you are part of something larger, a rhythm that ties people to fire, to food, to one another. There is a humility here, a reminder that warmth comes in many forms. Not every sleeper had a feather bed or silk sheets. For most it was straw, wool, and the companionship of others who work just as hard. And yet there is a dignity in it. A shared laugh before sleep, a shared blanket. If the night was bitter, the oven's glow, keeping every dreamer equal beneath its heat. Isn't that a kind of richness too? Let's pause with a small image. Imagine a kitchen maid, her hands raw from scrubbing pots, finally slipping down onto her pallet. She tucks the blanket under her chin, sighs once, and is gone into sleep almost instantly. Her dreams carry her not to work, but perhaps to summer meadows, or a feast where she too sits at the head of the table. The warmth of the kitchen is more than physical. It fuels her dreams, giving her a place where winter cannot touch her. And as dawn approaches, the rhythm shifts again. The embers, though faint, are stirred back to life. A cook stumbles in, hair tousled, rubbing eyes, already preparing for the day's tasks. Pots are lifted, water is fetched, bread dough that rose overnight is kneaded. The kitchen hums awake, its silence replaced by bustle once more. For those who slept here, the moment is bittersweet. The warmth that carried them through the night now gives way to labor, but they rise, knowing that comfort will return again when night falls. So why didn't people freeze in castles? Because even in their most practical spaces, they found ways to make warmth. In the kitchens, warmth was everywhere, in ovens, in food, in laughter, in the company of others, and in the knowledge that the fires would always be lit again tomorrow. As we step out of the kitchen now, leaving behind the scent of herbs and the hush of embers, let your mind carry that same sense of comfort. For the castle still has more secrets of warmth to share, and our next chapter will guide us there, through passages, chambers and stories that show once again that cold stone can be softened, if you know how to live within it.
Let us leave the kitchen now, with its embers still whispering, and climb upward once again. Imagine your feet on the spiral staircase, stone steps winding like a seashell, cool beneath your soles. The higher you go, the colder the air grows, little draughts sneaking through arrow slits. Your breath curls into the air in faint clouds, but don't worry, our path leads us to warmth, woven not from fire, but from fabric. We emerge into a tower chamber. The first thing you notice is how the walls are alive, not bare stone, but softened by tapestries. Great woven cloths hang floor to ceiling, their fibers dyed in rich reds, greens and blues. Some depict hunting scenes, stags leaping, hounds bounding, while others show saints or heraldry. The figures seem to move in the flicker of candlelight, not quite alive, but close enough to keep you company. And beyond their beauty lies their secret. They are insulation. These tapestries trap the warmth of the fire, and they hush the room, dulling the sharp echo of stone. Step closer and brush your fingers across one. The wool is coarse yet comforting, its threads carrying the faint scent of dye and earth. Imagine lying in bed with these cloths at your side, their colors soft in the night, their fabric holding back the bite of the cold. They are like giant blankets hung on the walls, turning a tower chamber into something almost cozy. The chamber itself is modest. A wooden bed, smaller than the lord's in the solar, stands near the fire. The hearth is narrower here, its flames quieter, but still it crackles gently, casting warmth outward. On the bed is a mattress stuffed with straw, covered with woolen sheets, and a fur laid across the top. Simple but effective. A servant or a guest might sleep here, grateful for the balance of height and seclusion. And though the tower is exposed to wind, it also offers something rare, silence. From these heights, the noise of the hall and kitchen fades. Instead you hear the sigh of the wind against the walls, the occasional call of an owl or raven, and the low crackle of firewood. Imagine lying here, wrapped in wool, staring at a tapestry that shifts softly in the draught. Your mind drifts into the figures, imagining their hunts, their saints, their stories, until sleep claims you. Here's a historical touch. By the late 14th century, tapestries were not only functional, but a sign of wealth. In 1389, for instance, records from the court of Richard II mention entire chambers lined with them, so heavy they needed teams to hang. They were movable too, rolled up and carried from castle to castle, so that warmth and beauty traveled with their owners. Imagine having your walls packed in bundles, ready to soften the next cold chamber wherever you went. It's a medieval version of carrying home with you. And let's not forget the floors. In some tower rooms, rushes or woven mats softened the stone, layer upon layer, stone mat, rug, tapestry, fire, blanket, fur, each piece small, but together they created an environment where people did not freeze, but found rest. So in this tower, warmth doesn't come from grand fires or bustling kitchens. It comes from fabric, from clever use of texture and design. A warmth woven, hung, layered, carried, a reminder that survival often lies not in the grand gesture, but in the quiet detail. Imagine yourself seated on a simple wooden stool, right beside the tower's narrow window slit. The cold seeps in through that opening, sharp as a blade, but the tapestry near it sways gently, shielding most of the draft. You reach out and press the fabric back just a little, peering through the stone embrasure. Outside, the night stretches wide, dark fields, a silvered river, the outline of distant hills, perhaps snow drifts softly down, flakes catching the moonlight before vanishing into the dark. You pull the tapestry close again, and suddenly the chamber feels warmer, as though the cloth itself has agreed to protect you. That was the secret of tapestries. They weren't only art, they were guardians of heat, of privacy, of peace. Without them, these towers would be echoing, barren places. With them the room feels lived in, softened, even intimate. Isn't it funny how fabric can change the very soul of a space? Even today, a bare wall feels cold, while a curtain or a rug brings life. Some instincts never leave us. The fire crackles quietly, though smaller than the roaring hearths of the hall. Its wood burns with a different rhythm here, slow, careful, measured. The logs are chosen with care, often smaller, for it would be wasteful to burn great timbers in a private chamber. Yet the warmth they give is enough. Imagine the flames leaning close to the tapestry, their glow making colors dance, the green of a stag's hide, the gold of a saint's halo, the red of a knight's banner. The figures ripple as though they too share the warmth. And what of the bed? It stands nearby, draped in wool and fur. The straw-stuffed mattress rustles faintly when you press down, its scent earthy, a reminder of harvest fields. The sheets are rough linen, cool at first, but soon warmed by your body. You climb in, pulling the fur close, tucking it under your chin. Around you the tapestries hang like silent companions, watching with woven eyes. The draught is tamed, the night's bite dulled. You are safe. Servants often tended to these chambers, ensuring the fires were lit before their lords or ladies retired. A brazier of coals might be carried up the stairs, its glow steady against the dark. The chamber was prepared not for grandeur, but for survival. Every layer, every cloth, every ember playing its part. Picture the servant slipping away, leaving the chamber hushed, and you alone with your fire and your tapestries. Sometimes children slept here too, bundled together in little beds or pallets along the walls. Their laughter would echo up the stairwell as they settled, until slowly it faded into the rhythm of sleep. And maybe you can hear it now, the muffled giggle, the soft murmur, the final sigh as eyes closed. Their dreams mingled with the woven hunts and saints on the walls, stories blending with sleep. And though the tower might seem lonely, it had its own charm. To sleep here was to be wrapped not only in warmth but in solitude. Far from the bustling hall, you could hear your own thoughts, your own breath. The tapestries whispered stories without sound. The fire hummed low, and the world beyond felt distant, safe behind stone and fabric. So here in this high room, warmth was stitched and woven, not roaring or bustling. It was the warmth of detail, of care, of cloth standing in defiance of stone. And as you rest, you begin to see how survival in castles was never just about fire. It was about layers, woven, stacked and gathered until the cold could not reach. Picture the chamber now as midnight settles fully in. The fire has burned lower, its flames shrinking into a cradle of embers. The glow is dim, yet enough to cast soft halos across the room.
The tapestries with their thick folds catch that light in curious ways, reds deepening into velvet shadows, blues turning to dusky grays, greens glowing faintly like moss in moonlight. They no longer look like lively scenes of hunts and saints but like quiet guardians, standing watch while you rest. If you close your eyes, the sounds of the tower are different from those below. Here the air is stiller. You may hear the faint rattle of wind against shutters, the occasional hoot of an owl circling outside. Sometimes the tower itself creaks faintly, as though adjusting its weight against the cold night air. Yet none of these sounds disturb you. Instead they lull you, nature and stone speaking softly to one another, while you lie cocooned in your little island of warmth. The bed curtains, when drawn, add yet another layer of insulation. Within them your breath makes the air warmer, and your body heat gathers like a little hearth of its own. Even with stone walls inches away, you feel removed from the world. Imagine the sensation, the fur brushing your chin, the linen beneath you warmed by your own presence, the air inside the curtains noticeably softer than the draft outside. It is a tiny miracle of medieval ingenuity, privacy and warmth in one. Now think of who might have shared this chamber. Perhaps a young page, tasked with learning courtly manners, asleep on a pallet at the foot of the bed. Perhaps a lady in waiting curled beneath her own blanket nearby, keeping watch in case her mistress stirred. Sometimes the room wasn't silent, but alive with the quiet shuffle of many sleepers, each cocooned, each forming part of the warmth of the whole, and in that shared space, a sense of safety spread, warmth multiplied by presence. It's worth remembering too, that warmth was not only physical, but also symbolic. Tapestries told stories, stories of family lineage, of saints protecting the household, of victories won. To sleep surrounded by them was to be wrapped in reminders of identity, faith, and belonging. Even if the wind howled, the images whispered, "You are not alone, you are part of something larger." Isn't that the most comforting blanket of all? Sometimes, during especially cold winters, extra layers were added, rugs on floors, furs piled higher on beds, and braziers placed strategically around the chamber. Servants might check on these braziers through the night, making sure they glowed steadily. Their footsteps, soft against stone, were part of the chamber's rhythm, reminders that the household never slept entirely. That balance between solitude and service was its own kind of warmth, a reassurance that even while you rested, care surrounded you. And here's a little surprise: some tapestries were woven with threads of gold or silver, not thick enough to glisten like treasure, but just enough to catch the light. Imagine lying in bed, eyelids heavy, watching tiny flecks of gold wink at you from the wall. It's like stars stitched into fabric, a private constellation glowing only in your chamber. A luxury, yes, but also a charm, light and warmth mingling in the smallest of ways. So the tower chamber becomes more than stone. It becomes a woven sanctuary, fire fabric, fur presence and prayer, all threads stitched together, turning cold into comfort. And as sleep deepens, the tower ceases to be a drafty room at all. It becomes a cocoon suspended in night, warmed by every layer of human care. Let's turn our attention now to the little details you might notice. If you stirred in the middle of the night, you pull the curtain back slightly, and the chamber is bathed in a dim orange wash from the embers. The shadows are long and soft, bending over the carved wooden furniture. A small chest near the bed sits closed, its iron fittings glinting faintly. Perhaps inside are folded linens, a wool cap for the coldest nights, or a sachet of herbs meant to scent the sheets. These small things were comforts too, tokens that warmth was prepared for, anticipated, not left to chance. The air in the chamber carries a blend of scents. Beeswax and smoke linger, but also the faint perfume of dried lavender tucked between the folds of fabric. Sometimes rushes were scattered on the floor, here as well, mixed with herbs that released their fragrance when stepped on. Imagine the faint sweetness that rose with each movement, calming the senses before sleep returned. It's not unlike how we today might spritz a bit of lavender spray on a pillow. The instinct to make sleep gentler is timeless. And what of clothing? In the tower rooms, people often slept with layers still on, woolen shifts, socks, sometimes even gloves on the harshest nights. A wool cap kept the head warm, and if you've ever pulled a blanket over your ears, you'll know the feeling, that delicious moment when the world outside is muffled, and all you hear is your own breath. Imagine that sensation, amplified by layers of cloth and the glow of fire just beyond the curtain. Sometimes, too, companionship added warmth. A faithful dog, allowed into the chamber, curled at the bed's foot. Cats, valued for their hunting skills, might steal onto blankets uninvited, but rarely unwelcome. Their warmth was another layer, and their purring another kind of lullaby. Have you ever felt how steady a cat's purr can be, vibrating softly against your chest or arm? Imagine it in a tower room, blending with the fire's low crackle, both sounds weaving into the same sleepy rhythm. Now think of the wind outside. At this height it lashes more fiercely than in the hall or kitchen. You can almost hear it clawing at the shutters, moaning through the arrow slits. But inside, the tapestries ripple only slightly, holding back the cold's bite. That contrast makes the warmth even more precious. To lie in bed, fur pulled tight, hearing the world storm outside, but feeling untouched, it's the very essence of comfort. A medieval version of listening to rain on the roof while you are safe indoors. And here's a thought. Some tapestries depicted gardens, filled with flowers and trees. To lie beneath such a scene in midwinter must have felt like a promise, a reminder that warmth and green would return. Dreams may have been shaped by such images, dreams of orchards in bloom, of rivers thawed, of sunlit hunts in meadows. Art itself became warmth, carrying the sleeper into gentler places. The chamber, then, is not just insulated against cold, it is insulated against despair. Every detail, from fur to fire to fabric, assures the mind that warmth is possible, that survival is certain, that comfort can be made even from stone, and when you sink back beneath the covers, your body believes it. So here in the tower, warmth is a tapestry of many threads, some literal, some symbolic, all woven tightly together. And with each layer, the night grows softer, until even the fiercest winds cannot reach you. The hours pass slowly in the tower chamber, the night pressing its cool hand against the shutters, while warmth gathers steadily inside. The embers in the hearth dim to a low glow, painting the room in shades of rust and shadow. Yet you are not cold. The bed curtains hold the heat, the furs are heavy against your body, and the tapestries stand guard like quiet sentinels. Every detail works in harmony, reminding you that people long ago understood comfort not as a luxury, but as survival. Imagine waking briefly in the small hours. You shift and the straw mattress rustles beneath the linen. The air outside the curtains feels sharp, but within your little cocoon, your breath has made it soft, almost spring-like. You reach out and touch the edge of a tapestry hanging near the bed. It is cool to the touch, its woolly surface slightly rough, but you know that on the other side, it holds back the draft that rattles against the stone wall. A simple cloth, yet it feels like a shield. Perhaps you lift the curtain and look around. The chamber is quiet, save for the faint crackle of the hearth, and the sigh of wind through the arrow slits. The carved chest gleams faintly, the woven rug on the floor shows its faded patterns in the emberlight, and above you the wooden beams hold steady, creaking softly like an old friend shifting in sleep. You lie back down, smiling faintly. Even in a place built for defense in stone, people found a way to make warmth feel personal, even tender. And think of the symbolism too. Tapestries did more than keep out the cold. They told stories, stitched with patience and skill. Stories of noble hunts, of saints offering blessings, of gardens eternal in bloom. To sleep under them was to rest beneath history itself, to be wrapped in the heritage of one's family or faith. Even in the chill of night, such reminders warmed the spirit. Isn't that what warmth truly is? A sense of belonging, of meaning as much as a matter of fire and fabric. As dawn nears, the chamber begins to change. The embers stir faintly, the fire's orange fading toward grey. The first pale light of morning filters through the narrow window, catching on the gold threads woven into a tapestry. For a moment it looks as though the sun has risen inside the chamber itself, glowing from the cloth. Slowly the figures on the wall emerge again from the shadows, saints lifting their hands in blessing, hunters frozen mid-chase. They return to watch over the waking day, just as they guarded the night. The household will soon stir, servants climbing the stairwell, carrying new logs for the fire, brushing away last night's rushes. Children may chatter as they bring warmth back with their laughter. But for this moment, you are still here, tucked in the layered warmth of fabric, fur and flame, listening as the castle yawns into life. And so in this tower chamber, we see again the truth of why people did not freeze in castles. They wrapped stone in story, drafts in fabric, bodies in fur, and spirits in memory. They layered their world until warmth was not just possible, but inevitable. As we leave this chamber behind, let us carry with us the image, a narrow room.
We leave the tower chamber behind, its tapestries swaying faintly in the draught, and wander downward into another part of the castle. At first, the stone corridors feel colder, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones, echoing off walls that seem endless. Your breath lingers in front of you, faint clouds trailing as though marking your path. But as we move further, notice how even here, in the long corridors and cloisters, warmth finds a way to appear. Picture the passage lit by torches mounted in iron brackets. Their flames flicker steadily, releasing small pockets of heat into the air. The light dances along the walls, making shadows ripple like waves. The torches don't banish the cold entirely, of course, but they provide comfort, little islands of fire to guide your steps. Every few paces, another torch waits, like a friend holding a lantern. Together they stitch the corridor into something less forbidding. And listen closely. Hear the sounds that soften the chill. The tap of boots on stone, muffled by rushes scattered along the floor. The low murmur of voices, perhaps two servants sharing a quiet word before bed. The distant crackle of a fire somewhere deeper in the castle. These sounds are faint, but they break the silence, reminding you that you are not alone. In corridors that might otherwise echo like tombs, the presence of others is its own kind of warmth. Now imagine stepping into a cloister. If the castle has one, these covered walkways, open on one side to a courtyard, were often used by monks or castle chaplains. In winter, cloisters were chilly places, the cold slipping easily through arches. But here too, people found warmth in routine. They walked slowly, hands folded, cloaks drawn tight, murmuring prayers. The rhythm of movement, the cadence of words, created a comfort that had little to do with temperature. It was warmth of spirit, steadiness of mind, carrying the body through the chill. And here's a small detail that makes me smile. In some corridors, braziers of hot coals were placed strategically to keep the worst of the cold away. Servants carried them from chamber to chamber, glowing baskets of fire that radiated comfort. Imagine passing one as you walked, the wave of heat brushing your face, the glow lighting your cloak, the brief sigh of relief before you moved on. It was the medieval equivalent of central heating, though portable and flickering, carried by human hands. Think of the cloaks themselves too. Heavy wool sometimes lined with fur, clasped at the chest with bronze or iron pins. In long corridors, cloaks weren't just clothing, they were personal hearths. The warmth followed you, swaying with each step. You can almost feel it now, the wool brushing against your arms, the fur collar catching your breath, the weight of the fabric reassuring on your shoulders. A moving cocoon in a castle of stone. Even the architecture helped. Corridors curved and narrowed, their shapes designed to block the wind. Doors stood thick and heavy, keeping drafts at bay. Curtains sometimes hung in archways, adding another layer of protection. Each element, however small, added to the castle's quiet defiance of cold. So yes, even in the long corridors and open cloisters, warmth was found, not in roaring fires or soft beds, but in light fabric, presence and ritual, layers once more, stitched into the rhythm of stone and life. As we move deeper into the castle's passageways, imagine the field beneath your feet. The floors are covered with rushes, scattered fresh with herbs like mint, lavender, or even chamomile. With each step, they release a soft crackle and a faint fragrance. The scents rise slowly into the air, calming, almost medicinal, mingling with the smoky perfume of torches. Even in the stark corridors, the smallest details softened the experience, turning a walk from chamber to chamber into something gentler. Now let's pause by one of those torch brackets on the wall. The iron is warm to the touch, heated by the flame it holds. You lean closer, and for a moment the corridor feels less like a tunnel, and more like a hearth stretched thin, with fires scattered along its length. It's a rhythm cold between, warmth at intervals, like stepping stones across a stream. Haven't you felt that yourself, moving through cold air only to find sudden comfort, a patch of sunlight, a heat event, the glow of a candle. The body remembers those contrasts vividly. At night these corridors weren't empty. Guards paced them, their boots tapping in measured cadence. Their lanterns swung gently, casting arcs of gold across the walls. Sometimes the guards hummed softly to themselves, or exchanged quiet greetings as they passed. Their presence was more than security, it was reassurance, to know that someone was walking, watching, keeping the cold and the silence from swallowing the castle whole. And let's step into a cloister once more. Those open walkways, surrounding an inner courtyard. In winter the courtyard might be frosted white, the trees bare, the fountain stiff with ice. Yet, under the covered walkway, you are sheltered. The arches block the wind, the roof keeps snow from falling on your shoulders. The cold is sharp, yes, but the rhythm of the arches, the order of stone and shadow, has its own warmth. Structure brings comfort, even when the air bites. Imagine walking slowly here, wrapped in your cloak, listening to the crunch of frost in the courtyard, and the soft swish of fabric around your legs. Some castles lined their corridors with benches or small niches, where one might sit for a moment by a brazier. Picture that now, you settling onto a wooden bench, cloak wrapped close, hands extended toward a shallow pan of glowing coals. The heat is steady, glowing red, warming your palms. A servant may pass, carrying another brazier to some distant chamber. The coal baskets glow, leaving a trail like a comet in the dark. These moments were small, but they stitched warmth into the castle's long bones. And consider the cloaks themselves once more. Some were lined with fur so thick that when pulled tight, they trapped body heat almost completely. Hoods extended forward, shadowing the face and keeping the breath close. If you've ever drawn a hood over your head in winter, you know that feeling, the way the world quiets, the way your own breath warms the small space inside. It's a portable sanctuary, carried with you down every corridor. The truth is, corridors and cloisters were transitional spaces, not meant for long stays. Yet, even they were touched by warmth, made bearable by torches, braziers, rushes, and fabric. They were bridges from one comfort to another, places where the cold could nip at you, but never consume you. And so, walking through them at night, was part of the castle's rhythm. A pause, a hush, a reminder of the balance between stone and warmth. The deeper we wander into these long passageways, the more we notice how the senses adjust. At first the chill feels sharp, but then your body learns to lean into the warmth of small details. The torches, the braziers, even the faint heat of your own breath inside a woolen hood. Each piece becomes more vivid against the stone's bite. It's a reminder that warmth, here, was never absolute, but always relative, a patchwork stitched into daily life. Imagine stopping by a small alcove, where a tapestry has been hung even in a corridor, not a grand woven scene, but something simpler, geometric patterns, flowers, or a family crest. The fabric hangs heavy, shielding a draft from a nearby door. You stand before it, and the difference is immediate. The air behind it is still, warmer than the corridor just outside. You press your palm against the cloth, and it feels almost alive, like a curtain between two worlds, a tiny sanctuary, hidden in plain sight. Now picture a servant hurrying past, carrying a lantern. Its glow arcs along the stone, bouncing against the iron sconces, making shadows dance like tall, thin figures, keeping pace. The servant's cloak sways, brushing against the rushes on the floor, stirring their herbal fragrance. He mutters softly, perhaps a prayer or a reminder of a task, his words swallowed by the stone. Yet, in that brief encounter, warmth passes between you, not from heat, but from presence. The reassurance that another heartbeat shares the night. The cloisters, too, had their subtle comforts. Even when the air was icy, there was rhythm in walking them. Step after step beneath the arches, the echo of your boots keeping time like a drumbeat. Some monks believed such walking kept the body warm. That slow, deliberate pacing was its own kind of fire, and perhaps they were right. As you walk, the blood flows, the breath deepens, and the chill becomes less an enemy and more a companion. Pause now at a brazier set against the corridor wall. Its basket of coals glows red, a little star within the stone. You hold your hands above it, and the heat rises eagerly, curling into your palms. The warmth seeps into your skin,
travels up your arms, loosens your shoulders. For a moment you close your eyes, feeling as though you've stepped into a private hearth, and when you move away, the memory of that warmth lingers, carrying you several steps further before the cold returns. Listen closely to the corridor's quiet music. The torch crackles softly, the rushes rustle underfoot, in the distance the faint clink of armor, as a guard shifts his stance. These are small sounds, but together they weave a sense of security. The castle is awake, even in its sleep, and you, wrapped in your cloak, warmed by passing fires, are part of that rhythm. A curious thought: some medieval texts speak of night air as dangerous, filled with mists, thought to cause illness. Curtains, tapestries, even hoods were not only for warmth, but for protection from this unseen threat. Whether or not it was true, the idea added another layer of comfort. To cover oneself was not only to guard against cold, but against harm. Warmth then was safety in every sense. So the corridors and cloisters, though they seem stark at first, are alive with hidden warmths. Fire in iron, cloth against stone, breath against fabric, steps against silence. They are the castle's arteries, carrying not just people, but comfort from one space to another, and walking them becomes less a trial, and more a meditation. As you move further down the passage, notice how the corridor itself shapes the experience of warmth. Narrow walls trap heat more easily, turning the space into a funnel where the torchlight feels stronger, the air a little gentler. Wider halls, on the other hand, let the cold creep in, the drafts slipping along the floor, like cats prowling in the night. You can almost feel the difference under your feet. Narrow spaces cradle warmth, wide ones scatter it. Imagine pausing at a doorway, curtained with heavy cloth. You lift the curtain slightly, and step into the next stretch of corridor. The air shifts immediately, cooler, sharper, carrying the faint smell of outside. Behind you the curtain falls again, sealing the warmth of the last section away. This layering of space was a quiet art in castles. Doors, curtains, bends, each one another shield against the endless winter. Now picture the people who walked these halls at night. A maid hurrying with a jug of hot wine for her mistress. A steward carrying a brazier of glowing coals, its light bouncing across the stones. A page boy half asleep, clutching a candle as he shuffles toward a chamber. Their cloaks swish, their footsteps echo softly, their voices, if any, barely more than whispers. Life moved gently in these spaces, as though the walls themselves insisted on silence. But warmth was not only carried in objects, it lived in the body. Guards on patrol stamped their boots against the rushes to stir circulation. Servants pulled cloaks tighter, pressed hands together to trap heat. Even laughter sometimes warmed the corridors. Imagine two tired scullions, arms full of linens, exchanging a quick joke as they pass. The chuckle bounces down the stone, softening the cold more than any torch could. Humor itself was another kind of fire. The cloisters offered their own kind of midnight poetry. You step out into one now, arches stretching ahead, shadows curled along the edges. The courtyard beyond is white with frost, the moon catching every edge in silver. The air is sharp, but your cloak is heavy, your hood close. You walk slowly, listening to your own footsteps echo beneath the arches. It feels timeless, like moving through a dream. And though the cold nips at your nose, there's a warmth in the rhythm, in the certainty of stone guiding your way. Sometimes in these spaces, music would drift faintly, a chant from the chapel, low and steady, carrying across the cloister. The sound wrapped itself around listeners like an invisible cloak, giving strength against the chill. Even today, a soft melody can warm us. Though the air remains cold, it is another reminder: warmth is not only felt on the skin, but in the heart, in the spaces between breaths. Pause now by another brazier, glowing brighter than the last. You extend your hands, and once again the heat rises eagerly. The light flickers across your face, painting it in amber. For a moment you linger, eyes half closed, letting the coals speak their language of comfort. Then you pull your cloak tighter, step back into the corridor's coolness, and continue onward. That little burst of warmth carries with you, the way a sip of tea lingers long after the cup is set down. And so each corridor becomes not just a passage, but a series of pauses, patches of warmth, patches of cold, stitched together like squares of a quilt. Step by step, layer by layer, the castle teaches you how to move with it, how to live in harmony with its stone. The night grows deeper, and the corridors seem quieter still. Torches burn lower in their brackets, their flames smaller now, though still steady. Shadows stretch further across the walls, bending and twisting like dark ribbons, yet there's comfort in their rhythm, in knowing that even as the fire wanes, it doesn't fail. The castle's light is never gone, it simply rests, the same way its people do. You pull your cloak tighter, and slow your pace. The rushes on the floor crunch gently beneath your boots, releasing the faintest trace of mint and lavender. The smell is so soft you might miss it, but once noticed it lingers, calm and steady. It reminds you that warmth isn't always heat. It can be fragrance, memory, association. The body feels soothed not only by fire, but by every sense working in harmony. As you pause near a tall window, you lift the wooden shutter just slightly. Cold air breathes in immediately, nipping at your cheeks. But beyond it, the view takes your breath away. The courtyard silvered by moonlight, rooftops dusted with frost, the stars sharp and endless above. For a moment you let the cold touch you, just enough to heighten the sweetness of warmth. When you close the shutter again, returning to your cloak, to the coals, feels like a homecoming. Contrast makes comfort richer. Now think of how many feet have walked these same halls. Generations of lords and ladies, pages and guards, cooks and children. Each one carried warmth with them, through cloaks, lanterns, laughter, duty. These corridors have seen everything from midnight feasts to solemn processions, from whispered secrets to hurried footsteps, and through it all, the torches burned, the braziers glowed, the fabrics hung. Stone endured, yes, but always softened by human effort. Sometimes sleep itself happened here. A guard leaning against the wall, dozing between patrols. A servant curling near a brazier, unable to make it back to the hall. Even these long passageways could become bedrooms of necessity, and in those moments, warmth was simple. A cloak pulled close, a torch's glow, a dream carried in the stillness. The castle allowed it, made space for it, the way it always did. Listen again to the sounds, a faint clink of armor, a guard shifting weight, a drip of water from a distant arch, the crackle of one last torch as it burns low. All of it blends into a lullaby of stone and flame, steady.
We've walked through halls and solars, towers and kitchens, corridors and cloisters. Now let us end our story where warmth was found in its most joyful form, in feasts, in fires, and in the gatherings that filled castles with life, even on the coldest winter nights. Imagine stepping once more into the great hall, but now not at bedtime, not quiet and hushed, but alive with celebration. Torches blaze in their sconces, banners ripple in the rising heat, and the hearth roars with a fire so tall it seems to stretch into the rafters. The cold outside is forgotten the moment you enter. The very air feels golden, thick with warmth, with scent, with sound. The tables are long and heavy, laid with trenchers of bread, steaming bowls of stew, roasted meats glistening in firelight. The smell is intoxicating. Wood smoke, spiced wine, honey-glazed pastries, all mingling into a perfume of abundance. It clings to your hair, your cloak, your skin, so that even when the feast ends, the warmth follows you into sleep. Picture yourself seated near the hearth, a cup of mulled wine in your hands. The drink is hot, spiced with cinnamon and cloves, the steam curling into your face like a soft embrace. Each sip spreads through your body, from throat to chest to fingertips, until the chill of the season feels like nothing but a distant dream. Have you ever felt that same comfort with a hot drink on a cold day? That deep sigh as warmth travels inward? The medieval feast was built on that feeling, multiplied by laughter and fire, and laughter was everywhere. Servants bustling, minstrels plucking strings, dogs nosing at scraps beneath the table. Nobles toasted one another with goblets of ale, their cheeks flushed from fire and drink. Children darted between benches, their giggles echoing louder than the storm outside. It was a warmth woven not just of fabric and fire, but of community, of shared life. Yet when the feasting ended, warmth lingered. The embers of the great hearth glowed long after the last plate was cleared. Some would sleep here, as in the earlier chapters, curling up near the fire's edge, but others carried the warmth with them, through full stomachs, through the lingering heat in their bones, through the memory of laughter. Sleep after a feast was always sweeter, heavier, more secure. There's a lovely irony here. The great hall was often the coldest room in the castle when empty, its ceilings high, its walls bare stone, its size impossible to heat fully, yet when filled with people, with fire, with food, it became the warmest of all. Isn't that true even now? A house feels warmer when it is alive with voices, no matter what the thermometer says. So picture this. The feast has ended, the tables are pushed aside, and you stretch out near the fire, your cloak serving as a pillow. The air is thick with the scents of roasted meat and baked bread, of spilled wine and crushed herbs. Above you the rafters creak, and the fire sighs as it settles into embers. Around you others murmur softly, drifting into sleep. The night is cold beyond the walls, but here you are wrapped in the warmth of celebration turned to slumber. And as your eyelids grow heavy, you realize this is the castle's greatest secret. Warmth was not only fire, nor fur nor fabric. It was people, gathered together, sharing what they had, transforming cold stone into something alive. The feast may be over, but the hall still hums with its echoes. Servants stack wooden trenchers, scrape scraps into buckets for the dogs and pigs, and wipe the long tables clean with rough cloths. The air is smoky, but not unpleasant. It smells of wood, of roasted fat, of ale, of the faint sweetness of honey cakes. The warmth of the fire lingers in the walls, in the benches, even in the rushes scattered across the floor. Everything seems to carry the day's heat, like stones still warm after sunlight. Some linger by the fire, even after their duties are done. A guard loosens his belt and stretches his legs toward the flames, sighing with relief. A servant girl curls near the hearth, hugging her knees, drowsy from food and wine. A minstrel strums a final tune, softer now, the notes falling like feathers into the quiet. The warmth isn't only physical, it's emotional too, a glow that clings to everyone, long after the feast's noise has faded. Imagine lying there yourself, the great hearth still blazing, sparks snapping and leaping upward. The fire's crackle is steady, almost like breathing. Shadows rise and fall against the stone walls, moving in rhythm with the flames. Above the rafters are dark, but the occasional gleam of a shield or sword catches the firelight, shining like stars tucked indoors. It's as though the night sky itself has bent down to join the sleepers. And while the nobles climb to their solas, many of the household remain here in the hall. They spread straw mattresses near the embers, pull cloaks over their shoulders, and settle close to one another. The cold can't creep in. When bodies are near, when laughter and murmurs carry into dreams, there's a certain democracy in this arrangement. The high and the low alike, relying on the same fire, the same stone, the same night for rest. Sometimes, too, food itself added warmth to the night. Think of a steaming bowl of pottage eaten before bed, barley and peas thickened with broth, perhaps flavored with a scrap of bacon, or a handful of herbs. The heat filled the belly and radiated outward, carrying you more gently into sleep. Or perhaps a cup of mulled wine, red and spiced, warming not only the throat, but the very soul. To end the evening with such nourishment was to ensure that the night ahead would not feel harsh. And music, yes, always music. Even after the official feast ended, soft songs continued. Minstrels plucked gentle melodies, or servants hummed old lullabies to themselves. The notes were simple, repeating, soothing. Imagine lying in the hall, belly full, limbs heavy, hearing the faint hum of song blending with the fire's crackle. It's the kind of sound that carries you past thought, past time, straight into dreams. Here's a small historical detail. In 1413, records from Henry V's household describe winter feasts where fires burned for days without pause, logs replaced constantly to keep the hall warm through endless celebrations. The fire became a living thing, almost like another guest at the table, always present, always giving. To sleep by such a fire was to rest beside a companion that never abandoned you. So the hall after a feast is not silent, not empty. It is full of warmth lingering in every form: food, fire, laughter, music, company. Cold may wait outside the walls, but here, inside, it has no place. Here, stone glows golden, and night itself seems gentler. As the night stretches on, the great hall begins to quiet. The fires are still strong, but the noise of feasting has faded into soft murmurs, then into silence broken only by the occasional laugh. cough, or sigh. You can almost feel the air itself exhale, settling after the riot of voices and clatter. The warmth seems steadier now, more intimate, as though the hall has shifted from public spectacle to private haven. Picture yourself lying close to the hearth, a rough woolen cloak pulled over you. The stone beneath the rushes is still cool, but the fire's heat pushes against it, softening its bite. The embers glow bright, sending out waves of warmth that seep into your bones. You hear the pop of resin in the logs, the hiss as sap meets flame, and each sound becomes part of your lullaby. Fire in its way was as much music as warmth. Around you others have already drifted into sleep. A cook snores softly, sprawled near the bench where he worked earlier. Two children lie curled together like kittens, their hands clasped beneath the same blanket. A dog sprawls belly up, paws twitching in dreams of chasing hares. The rhythm of breathing, the occasional shuffle or sigh, becomes a chorus. This chorus, more than any torch or tapestry, was proof of safety. To sleep surrounded by others was to feel secure, even when the wind howled beyond the walls. And yes, the wind is still there. You can hear it rattling at the shutters, clawing at the cracks, rushing down from the hills beyond. But inside, the fire answers it. Each gust is met by a crackle, each moan by a shower of sparks. The hall becomes a shield, and the fire its beating heart. The cold may prowl outside, but here it is kept firmly at bay. Sometimes, the warmth of a feast lingered in the body itself. Full stomachs carried heat, wine-flushed cheeks long into the night. Even when the fire dimmed, these inner embers stayed lit, letting sleep come more easily. Imagine stretching out after such a meal, your limbs heavy, your breath slow, your body humming with quiet satisfaction. You don't need much more, just the fire's glow, and the press of a blanket, to fall deeply into dreams, and those dreams might be flavored by the feast. Perhaps visions of roasted boar, of golden pies, of tables laden with fruit, or perhaps dreams of laughter, of songs that still echo faintly in memory. The body carried these things into sleep, turning celebration into comfort that lasted long after the last goblet was drained. There's a detail from 13th century chronicles that tells us nobles often gifted their guests blankets or cloaks after feasts, so they could sleep warmly on their journey home. Imagine that kindness, wrapping a traveler in fur or wool, sending them into the night with warmth to carry. The feast did not end with the food, it lingered, a gift carried outward, spreading comfort like a ripple. And so lying here in the hall, after a feast, you realize again why people did not freeze in castles, because warmth was not only a matter of stone and fire, it was carried in food, in drink, in song, in company. It lingered in the body, in the memory, in the spirit. So the hall, once loud and bright, now soft and hushed, becomes another bedroom, not a cold cavern, but a nest built from fire, laughter, and the shared breath of many sleepers. The fire in the hearth burns lower now, yet it remains steady, glowing like a giant lantern at the heart of the hall. Its light flickers across the rafters, casting long shadows that sway gently, as though the beams themselves are breathing. The rushes on the floor release a faint fragrance as sleepers shift upon them, mint, thyme, and dried grasses stirred by weight and warmth. It is subtle, but in the quiet, it becomes noticeable. A soft perfume carried into dreams. A few figures still sit awake. An older guard, wrapped in his cloak, sharp-eyed even in drowsiness, keeps watch by the door. A minstrel too restless to sleep, plucks a string quietly, the notes so faint they feel more like thoughts than music. These sounds mix with the crackle of the fire, and the sigh of sleepers, creating a harmony that belongs only to nights like this. You are never alone in such a hall, even silence is shared. The warmth now feels layered. First the fire, steady and radiant, then the furs and blankets draped across bodies, then the shared heat of so many sleepers, breathing in rhythm. The air itself grows thick, not stuffy, but protective, wrapping everyone inside a cocoon of life. Outside, the wind howls sharper, but in here, its voice is muffled, softened, turned into background music. Imagine turning in your sleep, pulling your cloak closer. Its wool is rough, but dependable, smelling faintly of smoke from earlier in the evening. Beneath you, the rushes rustle softly, like the sound of grass stirred by summer wind. You feel the warmth of another sleeper nearby.
not intrusive, but reassuring. In the Middle Ages, privacy was rare, but closeness was safety. To feel another's presence in the night was to know you were not alone in the face of winter. Sometimes, the fire was kept burning all night, logs stacked high, so it would not fail. Servants would wake at intervals to tend it, adding wood, stirring the embers, ensuring the hall never lost its heart. Think of the quiet dedication of that task, walking barefoot across cold stone, lifting heavy logs, coaxing the flames higher, then slipping back to rest. Such small acts of care meant that dozens slept without fear of frost. Here's a little curiosity. Certain feasts ended with gifts of spiced nuts or candied fruits. These were eaten late, sometimes just before bed. Sweet, warming and rare, they carried their comfort long into the night. To drift to sleep with the taste of honeyed almond still on your tongue must have been a luxury as soothing as any fur blanket. The hall itself joined in this warmth. The high walls, though built of stone, had absorbed the fire's heat all evening. By midnight, they gave some of it back, radiating softly, like a great hearth extended in every direction. The castle was no longer just a fortress, it was a partner in survival, its very stones lending their quiet warmth to the night. And so, as you lie in the hall after the feast, you feel yourself part of something greater, part of a chorus of breathing, part of a rhythm of fire and stone, part of a tradition that has carried countless sleepers through countless winters. Warmth here is not only personal, it is collective, and that, perhaps, was the greatest shield against the cold. The night wanes, and the great hall lies heavy with sleep. The fire is no